Hello and welcome. It is so wonderful to see you all. I am Jen from Sundae Baubles, and this is our Sundae Brunch. And it's been about 3 weeks since we have last been together. I've been working on a work project. Our first launch was last Sunday. It was successful. Our second and final launch is today, right after Sundae Brunch, and it will also be successful. And I'm so excited because that means I'm going to have a little bit more time back in my personal life to spend with all of you. Today's talk is all about sulfide cameos and special glass, and I'm going to share why. But first, I want to say hello. It is great to see you all. I see so many familiar names. I see Deborah, Robin, Charlene, Jen, Lee, Plenty of Nothing. I see Stephanie, Fleur de Montagne, Beverly, Robin. I hope I've mentioned everybody. I may have missed a name or two, and I apologize if I have. Carol, Deborah, it is truly great to see you all. Hey, Gina. So what we're going to be talking about today is this little guy, and it's very wee, but don't worry, I'm going to show you a video in just a split second. And really, we're going to focus on the magic of glass today. This little piece is something that I managed to find at a local pawn shop to me, not in person, online. I have not had any time to do any in-person shopping in months, but I found this guy online and I bought it on a whim because it is something that I've been looking for a long time, and we're going to do a deep dive into a very, very niche part of glass culture from the 18th century and early 19th century, which is sulphide cameos. But first, we need to talk a little bit about glass. Before we do that, I must say hello, an extra special welcome to April and Robin, who have joined our Extra Scoop Club. Again, the easiest way to join is right here on YouTube. There's a little join button. And we are going to be doing our next meetup 2 weeks from today on Sunday. I'll be sending out some details later today. Like I said, super excited to have a little bit more time back into my life to spend with all of you. Hello, Barb. Hello, Michelle. Hello, everybody. So this is the inspiration for today. Now, I've been looking for a sulfide cameo for years, and I'm going to share with you what caught my eye about it. But first, we're not going to keep you in suspense. We're going to show you a video so that you can see how three-dimensional this is. Take a look at the detail and the abs on those Roman warriors. They are pretty spectacular. You can see that it is a very neoclassical piece, and it is very, very three-dimensional in your typical Georgian collet setting. Really quite spectacular. Now, I'll share with you what caught my eye about this one, but we do need to dive into one of my favorite subjects, the magic of glass. Now, glass is created when molten material cools so rapidly that there's not enough time for a crystalline structure to form. And crystals have atoms that are arranged in an ordered lattice-like structure. In liquids, atoms move very freely and randomly, and that's what allows them to flow. But in glass, atoms are held in this rigid, when it's cooled, structure, and they also aren't arranged into an ordered lattice. So many scientists say that glass is a rigid liquid, and that's where sometimes with beautiful transparency, some amazing art forms are created. Glass has been found in nature forever. It is caused by lightning strikes on beaches and in the deserts. Meteorites hitting the earth can have the elements that are required to create glass. And of course, we've got volcanoes, and the lava that cools, essentially that magma, is glass as well. We won't spend too much time on the science of it all, but essentially, glass can be made by humans with 4 simple components, and that is sand, soda, lime, and heat. And about 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, that is where humans craftsmanship really started to create beautiful, beautiful things out of glass. It is so special. Exactly. Jane, you are on the same page, and you can reverse it afterwards. It is such an amazing material. And this is why it has always inspired me, and I consider it such an art form. We're going to fast forward to ancient Rome so that we can look at a few special pieces, because we're going to jump a few periods today so that we can talk about how glass has been harnessed into jewelry. First, we'll look at an amazing ancient Roman art glass bowl. Now, this bowl takes many different techniques to create it. Glass was often the ornaments of the wealthy. Not everybody could afford to have it. It was very rare to find all the right components and to be able to pay for a craftsman to really put them together and create vessels for other expensive things like perfumes or important vessels and wares that were used for ceremonies. So this is where we have to understand that initially glass was not attainable to everybody, and it was considered very, very expensive. We've also got a beautiful example from a museum which has a Roman mold blown glass bottle of a fish, which shows you that even thousands of years ago, the craftsmen were developing techniques that were even used in the 20th century for molding things, which is really quite fascinating. It's a beautiful bottle. Now, glass was also used to mold cameos of important figures, and we've got a couple of examples. We've got Livia Drusilla, and she was a very, very powerful woman in imperial Rome, the wife of Caesar Augustus, and she also divorced and remarried and had other children, including Tiberius. If you're not familiar with her, I do suggest that you do a little bit of research because she is a fascinating figure. Now, these pieces were often meant to be an homage to the person that was in them, but sometimes they were also gods and goddesses. They helped point to affiliations. Ancient Roman glass finger rings were also something that the wealthy wore. Sometimes the merchant class, sometimes it was the royals, always people with means. And glass in jewelry has always been symbolic of either an allegiance or representative of some other aspiration. And of course, in jewelry, signets became very, very important because they became something that could be used almost as a signature, especially when they were pressed into a wax seal. So we're going to take a look at just a couple of ancient Roman glass intaglios. These have been dug up. These are better preserved examples right here, and these have glass paired with metal. Now, glass and gemstones were carved during these times, but gemstones were even more expensive and a little bit harder to come by. So often, especially with the merchant classes, they would choose to use glass. Jewelry really belonged to only the wealthiest, and whether it was stone or glass, it was important. We have here an ancient Roman glass cameo ring as well, and this one is three-dimensional. So we call it a cameo when it is three-dimensional coming out, and we call it an intaglio when it is engraved and kind of in the reverse. And now we are going to fast forward a little bit to intaglios and tassies. Now, tassies are going to be a very important term to remember if you're ever looking for intaglios and glass taglios, because these are, there's a man, James Tassie, and we're going to talk about him, but he's often credited with creating a lot of them. And unless they're signed pieces, please be aware that they should not actually be called tassies. They're more tassie in style. First, just to give you an idea of how these were used in signet rings, they were pressed into wax seals. And so this would say, I signed it or I authorized something. And it was a way of saying this actually came from the hand of the person that it was supposed to have come from. You have to remember, not everyone was literate. So that really meant that having a pictorial representation, and as we think about the 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, it became all important for families to have their crests, and royalty used this as well. Now, we're going to take a look at Mr. James Tassie, and he was an engraver and modeler. He would engrave gems, and he also created a technique in order to engrave glass as well, and he became renowned for this. He did a lot of work on neoclassical subjects, and he even did work for Josiah Wedgwood of the Wedgwood Company. This is an example of a drawer full of carving work that he has done in glass, and there are many, many examples that are preserved in museums. His jewels, and they were referred to as jewels, were often used in jewelry as well. So we've got an example of a ring, and if you look very, very closely on the bottom of that ring, you can see a signature. So during the Georgian period, there was a strong neoclassical revival. The ideals, the mythologies, the style, and politics were all of great interest. And so these examples of his work and this drawer of tassies were very important. Here are some examples of the molds that he made for Wedgwood. Truly beautiful. Now, this is not signed for him, and I'm not claiming that it is, but this is my intaglio in my collection, which you've all seen before. And it is another example of glass that has been engraved very, very finely and becomes quite a piece of art. The reason I'm showing it today is because today's mug giveaway is actually an extra special one. It is going to be of my Grillos intaglio, and this is something I've never given away before. So please enter #win into the chat in all caps for your chance to win this extremely limited edition mug to celebrate today's show and the magic of glass. So get that #win in, and we will definitely be doing our draw before the end of the show today. Now, without further ado, we are going to jump into Sulphide Cameos. I think I've kept you in suspense for long enough. So let's do our deep dive. First, let's talk about what sulfide is. Sulfide is a white porcelain-like material formed to be encased in and applied to glass. That's our definition for today. And it derives from sulfur, which was used in 18th century mold making. So that's where the name came from. And here again, we have the example in a small brooch that is still very mighty. And I'm going to play the video again so that we can see how three-dimensional it is. Now, this was an exploration of glass as well as neoclassical revivalism in the Georgian period and miniaturized. So this is something that they were doing. They were trying to miniaturize all sorts of artworks. And so it is quite an interesting example of something that was considered to be very special around 1780 or so. They remained very popular up until about the 1820s, 30s, 40s, and then there was a little bit of a shift. But we will first look at some examples and talk about how these were made. Now, glass blowing, if you think about it, you are dipping a metal rod into a crucible, picking up some glass, turning, blowing it into a balloon-like shape, and allowing that to cool. With a sulfide cameo, there was a very, very special technique where first you would have to have your sulfide, and then you would insert it essentially into a balloon of glass, and then rather than blowing into the balloon, you would suck out all of the air in order to pull the glass tight around the sulfide. And we have here an example, an illustration from a book written by Apsley Palat in 1849 called The Curiosities of Glassmaking, which really shows how these were created. So basically, you'd have your sulfide, and then you would need to insert it into hot molten glass and then suck the air out. And it would encase the object. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And that's why in this piece here, you can see that it is three-dimensional, and yet there's no space between it and the ground. Now, the telltale characteristics of these pieces were that they were usually on a black, sort of flint-colored background. They were never colored. And the sulfide inside was usually a white or off-white color as well. And this is going to become quite important because later, during the revival periods, there were a lot of similar creations that were made to sort of replicate this technique. And they are equally beautiful, but we want to be able to spot the difference. So let's look at a couple more examples. This one is an example that was auctioned off at Sorters, and it is quite an amazing ring. Again, very three-dimensional, and you can see that. Now, the neck on this one is very three-dimensional, and that's actually where it is signed. So sometimes these pieces, if there was a piece that was able to be sort of signed because it was three-dimensional and still be well hidden, you would be able to do so. And this one is one that is done by Palat. Here is an example of King George. I want to say King George III, and again, wonderful Georgian Sulphide cameo. Often the topics were going to be either neoclassical or they would be of someone, like a figure that is in current ruling status, or sometimes it would just be like lifestyle sorts of images. Now, this is a later piece. So as time went by, it became very evident that it was very, very laborious to create small pieces. So larger and larger pieces began to be created. And so this is an example of a tortoiseshell box that has some horses on it. And again, you can see from different angles that it is, again, very three-dimensional, still on that sort of neutral colored black flint background as well, but a lot of details to it. And the sulfide almost has like a shimmer to it. Yes, Jane, you're exactly right. The sulfide would be already formed and then inserted. Now, it was realized that it would be even easier if you could create this sulfide cameo and then apply it to other things. And so things like paperweights became very commonplace, and this became the most common use, where you would have the bust, whether it was someone like Queen Victoria in this example here, or a neoclassical figure that would end up being applied. And as time went on in the mid 1800s, towards the end of the century, again, these pieces got bigger and bigger. And we have another example in a scent bottle, which is a sulfide cameo that's been applied. And you can see that in this case, it was a little bit easier to create it, because what they did was they created the bottle and then they would create the piece which they'd adhere to the top. The sulfide was usually molded. So similar to creating like jasperware, wedgwood, what they would do is they would first engrave all the details into a plate, and then they would press the sulfide and have it form, and then that would be the piece that was very, very detailed. It could be further carved as well if they wanted to add more pieces, which is why you're able to get such incredible detail. Great question, Stephanie. Here's one more view of that bottle, so you can kind of make out the difference between where the sulfide is and where the glass is in the mound. Beautifully carved, but in my opinion, these larger examples don't really hold a candle to the smaller jewelry. Now, 20th century sulfides were absolutely a thing as well. Everything old is new again. And so we're going to show some examples of exactly how these were inspired and created. We've got some early 20th centuries examples where this is on glass, it's just on a foiled background. But again, you've got a depiction of sort of early Victorian, late Georgian life. And so this was very popular around the turn of the century and up into the Art Deco period, where you would see examples. And the first two examples that I'm going to show you are very similar in that they have a foiled back as well as the sulfide on the front. But one of the differentiating details that you're able to look for is whether it's that flint colored black background or not. And in this case, it is meant to be sort of that purple foiled look. Not to be confused with morpho butterfly jewelry, which we're going to jump to in just a second. So here is another example. And again, take a look at the background of this. This is something that is, in fact, not a butterfly wing, but rather engine turned and foiled. And there is indeed glass on top of this, but it is more of a glass dome. So it's not pulled in and sucked away in both of these examples. It is a dome that sits on top of the sulfide. We also have the popularization of morpho butterfly jewelry and sulfides. And there were a couple of companies that did this. There was Thomas Elmott and there was the Shipton Company as well. And so they would use a combination of sulfides and then apply that to the morpho butterfly backing and then put glass over top. Now, in these cases, the glass was not melted over top. Instead, it was all adhered, and then it would be stabilized, because clearly you cannot apply heat that was required of molten glass onto a butterfly wing. It is far too delicate. So it is a beautiful example, and there's quite a few. And again, they always went with the motifs of what was popular at that point in time. So if you're ever trying to date pieces like this, think about, when was florography popular? In the Victorian period, absolutely, up through the early 20th century as well, so into the early 1900s, 1910s. We also have that neoclassical revival. It was all important through the Edwardian period, as well as through the Art Deco period, and a lot of beautiful examples. And these can be found on eBay. If you look on gem.app, you can find all sorts of examples. Now, morpho butterfly jewelry did continue to evolve, and a less expensive way to mass produce it was by painting parts of the glass and then having this adhered over top of the butterfly wing. And here's an example of the crinoline lady, which is a very desirable motif. And there's many examples where it is a woman wearing a very full skirt that are available. You can see that the butterfly wing is the background and the painting is in the foreground, and it creates a wonderful sort of sheer, effervescent garment for her to wear. Now, morpho butterfly wing jewelry was also incredibly popular in tourism jewelry. I've seen all sorts of Egyptian revival and Cairo pieces, and I've had some in my collection. We've got celebrations of different ships on their voyages. We also have the 1920s celebration of Japanism in Art Deco. Really, anything goes. And as time went on, these remained popular into the 40s as well. Often you would see palm tree motifs, or you would also see motifs where you've got pine trees or other things too. And then we must also nod towards Essex crystals in jewelry. So for those who are not familiar with Essex crystals, this is another form of intaglio, but the carving actually happens on the back. And now, initially, Essex crystals were created in rock crystal, but they've also been done in glass and even in plastic. So the way something like this was produced, you would essentially have a mother of pearl background that was placed behind a piece of carved rock crystal that had paint put on the internal portion before it was sealed up, which is really, really quite beautiful. And then they would be applied into all sorts of jewelry. Now, many say that the Essex crystal is attributed to William Essex, who was a miniaturist for Queen Victoria. But the truth is, that is misinformation. Now, it turns out that it's not that he had nothing to do with it whatsoever, but rather it was his student. William Essex was known for miniatures of all types, paintings, as well as enamels. And in fact, this Shakespeare sort of ideal of what he could look like is attributed to him. But his student is actually the one who should be credited for popularizing this. And his student's name was William Bishop Ford. And we can see his signature here. Often pets were memorialized forever into these wonderful pieces. Now, William Bishop Ford did not invent the technique. It was actually a Belgian, Emile Marius Pradier, who came up with this in the 1860s. But Mr. Ford was often credited with having popularized this, and he's done many incredible examples that you can still find available. Here are some more examples. So this is a late Victorian beautiful flower basket. And you're going to see that the quality starts to change over time as perhaps they stop being made for the very highest end of jewels and begin to be used in things that are more commonly available. We've got horse and hounds. Again, these are extremely three-dimensional because of that mother of pearl backing, and it almost serves as like a magnifier to have the details carved into either the glass or the crystal. Right? That is amazing. You've got something very special. This is a bird on a branch, again set in gold, allowing the mother of pearl to shine through and make it seem like it's the bright light of day. And then we get into some sort of lesser detailed pieces. We've got goose, possibly a turkey, and another dog, and you'll see that the details become just a little bit less. The inferior quality examples and the examples that really start to be carved in plastic, you're able to tell because there's poor details in the painting. And so this is an example. It is still a wonderful piece of art glass for sure, but you'll notice that it's a little bit more blobby in nature. And then we've got a terrier here, and the details in the painting are quite poor. The mother of pearl is actually painted as well on the background, and it just isn't quite the same level. So these have been very, very popular from the 1860s all the way through the 1940s. You can find examples with nursery rhymes, with flags, with all sorts of things. So really, really quite special. Now, we are going to play a little bit of the Spot the Difference game today to help put into perspective these beautiful types of magic glass. And I'm going to share with you now 4 examples, A, B, C, and D. And we're going to take a look at each one of these and talk about what it is and what it isn't and how we're able to tell. So first, let's begin with A. And I'm going to pause on A for a moment. And I would love for you to tell me, what do you think the materials are and what do you think the time frame is that this was created in? We've got a beautiful silver brooch. It is set with some little dogtooth sort of bezel. And then we see palm trees, a lovely rising sun, a bit of beach. You'll notice that there's a very iridescent background in that sort of morpho blue, and I'm going to start to give you all the hints. Ray, you are bang on, first in, and could not be more correct. This is indeed an example of that morpho butterfly wing jewelry from the 1940s. Good job, Stephanie. You guys are great. Good job, Crystal Kelly. Good job, Gar. Good job, Charlene. So we can see the background is indeed that morpho butterfly, and then we've got that painting in the front. And it is really a stunning piece. If you've seen these in person, they're really quite special, and they can just add that extra pizzazz to an outfit as well, even if they're small, because of the way the light hits them and that blue shines. Now, next up, we've got item B. And so item B, if you look very closely, you can see all of the details that are inside the carriage. You can see the harness on the horses as well. You've got a black background, which is to be expected in these antique types of pieces. Let me know what you think it is. And you may notice that it is in very similar shape to the example that I showed you earlier. I'll probably show you the video at least one more time as well. But this one is indeed a proper Sulphide cameo. And this one comes from the V&A collection, and it is a early Victorian piece. And it is an early Victorian piece that is nodding back a little bit earlier. So it's probably around 1840s or so. Quite beautiful, but we do have the black flint background, and it is indeed a sulfide. Great job, everybody. Very, very good job. Jane, I see you in. Stephanie, I see you in. Great job. Next up, we have C. Now, I try to leave a bit of the reflection on this so that you can see that there is indeed glass over the top. And this is a glass example. You've got a nice iridescent background, and it is beautiful. And that one was not a dome, Deborah. It was actually a proper sulfide that has been sort of, the air's been sucked out in between. And it sits static. So in this example, we've got another lovely flower. Very specific, Ray. I love it. And we do indeed have an Essex style crystal. And I've called this a pearlescent background. We've got our carving that is done intaglio style on the inside, or the reverse carving, and then beautiful painting that has been done with excellent choices as well. It is beautifully made. Good job, everybody. And then our last one, D. think you'll know exactly what this one is. This one is different from the first example that we looked like, where there was actually a glass backing. And you can tell that this is indeed natural material because there is a little bit of wear, maybe it's a little bit of water damage around the edges. And this is what tends to happen to the morpho butterfly wings as they age. They can sort of begin to deteriorate a little bit. So this is indeed a butterfly wing sulphide. Great job, Angela. We've got our morpho butterfly wing and the sulphide details as well. You all did such an amazing job. I am really impressed. Yes, Jane, you got it. Marlene, you too. So many of you. Rune, fantastic. I'm very impressed. You guys are getting really good at training your eyes. So we are going to do a draw for the special Grillos Intaglio mug. Please get your hashtag win all caps in. I'm going to put the banner up real quick just to let you know how to do that. So type win. I will cover the shipping costs to the winner. You don't have to worry about anything at all. You just need to send me your shipping address and we will get it off to you. And we've got 28 entries so far, so I'm going to give this just a moment before we do the draw. And I want to share some of the details of what is coming up in our next talks. So as I mentioned, I haven't been out and about shopping in person for a little bit, but that hasn't stopped me from getting one or two things online. And once again, I have been shocked and frustrated by the sheer number of misrepresentations, reproductions, fakes, and other things that I'm seeing online, but also delighted by some of the wonderful things that can be found. So our next Sundae brunch, 2 weeks from today, we are back on schedule, is going to be called Bargain or Bust: Opportunities and Deceptions. Learn to spot the difference. And we're going to cover everything from how to dig into certifications that may be included with items that you're looking at, whether it's from an appraiser or from GIA or some other organization. We'll talk about how to get the best value for your buck, how to protect yourself as a collector and a seller as well. So it is going to be a lot of fun. Ooh, fantastic. I love hearing that you guys have some special pieces in your collection. And again, we will be doing our Zoom for the Extra Scoop Club happening as well on that same Sunday. Details to come out. So lots of fun to be had. All right, we have 35 entries now for the mug. I'm going to put it up one more time. Here we have it. I will stop the banner. And we are going to do our draw. All right, to the giveaway tool. Here it comes. 36 entries. I am going to count down from 10 to give everybody a chance to make sure that they're in. So we'll go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Good luck to everybody. 1, and let's draw and see who is winning the mug today. And our winner is... No way. Okay, you guys, guess what? When this happens, because I have to type the first comment so I can pin it, it means that the winner gets an extra $50 sent by PayPal from me to you, and I do another draw right now. So today's winner is going to get the double prize of $50 cash and a mug. So it's happening. It's an exciting Sunday. This has to be a good sign for my lunch that's happening in about an hour, isn't it? I think so. Okay. Make sure you get your hashtag win in. If you haven't already entered, this is your sign. Make sure you enter because you might have a chance at some cash as well as a mug. Let me share my screen again, and I am going to do the draw. Let's do it. Good luck, everybody. To the giveaway screen. All right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drawing again. Good luck to you all. Let's see who's going to win. Crazy Maze stash. Congratulations. Fantastic. All right. I have your email address, I'm quite sure, so I will be in touch. Congratulations, you win the cash prize plus the Grillos mug. You never know what's going to happen here. Sometimes the Sunday brunches get a little bit wild. I do have one more announcement, and that is just what is upcoming on the schedule of events. So again, we've got in 2 weeks from today, the Bargain or Bust show, and then we have the long-awaited overview of Georgian jewelry 2 weeks after that. So lots of exciting things to come. And we will also have a few more of our extra scoop events that are long overdue. So thank you all for your patience as I have worked through delivering one of the biggest enterprise projects that I've had in the last recent years, and I am excited to spend more time with you all. I hope you have a fantastic Sunday. Thank you so much for being here today. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, sundaebaubles@gmail.com. It's going to be a great week ahead. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. Oh, I see a question. From Ray, one question. Your bishop forward is flanking the signature panel in the reverse, but the miniature is very good. Does that detract from the piece? Well, obviously any kind of damage or if it looks like the signature has been interfered with would be a concern. But if it's simply age-related wear and everything else looks good, the signature looks good, and the piece looks good, it shouldn't detract too much because often these pieces were closed in a way that you couldn't even see the back. So it's actually rare to have the signature and fantastic that it's there. If you want to send me a picture, I'm happy to have a look and we can have a chat about it. It may have a light impact, but I don't think that it's going to dramatically devalue your piece. All right. Thank you for the questions. I'm going to scroll up real quick and see if I've missed anything. I don't think I have outside of that. All right. Thank you all for being here. Happy Sunday, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Thanks, everybody.